So this is now becoming basically a humiliation ritual, right? So I can't imagine just having shared a link to a movie, even, yes, okay, the movie had some falsehoods. He's acknowledged that. He immediately acknowledged it, which was the right thing to do, that there are some things in here that maybe are not correct. He took ownership over that. But despite doing that, they're just humiliating him. They just want to humiliate him. They want to take money from him, and they want to show to everybody else that we have the full power and control over our players. They're essentially approaching him, pretending that every single word of the documentary that Kyrie Irving did not make, he has to answer for. Could you imagine a world in which everything you watch, right, you are somehow now responsible for every single word within it? Notably absent, by the way, is the press going up to Jeff Bezos, who is the owner of Amazon, who runs Amazon, and saying, hey, why did you allow this documentary to be on Amazon? There's no outcry. There's no everybody delete your Amazon accounts because of this documentary. They are putting this firmly and squarely on Kyrie Irving, which is problematic in the first place. I want to also make it clear that in listening to his words, it is pointedly ridiculous that they would say that he is unfit to be associated with. There was nothing that he said, but I would say that he is unfit to be associated with because he very clearly condemns the falsities in the movie. He says, I do not think this way. He actually calls them falsehoods that are unfortunate, right? He says that that is not what I said. Do not attribute every word in this documentary to what my beliefs are. He also very clearly stipulates to them, when they ask him, are you anti-Semitic? He clarifies that he's not anti-Semitic. Now, why is Kyrie Irving saying that? Why is he saying, I can't be anti-Semitic? Why is he saying that a couple of breaths after he talks about the Oxford Dictionary? So here is the definition of Semitic straight from the Oxford Dictionary. It's relating to or denoting a family of languages that includes Hebrew, Arabic, and Aramaic, and certain ancient languages such as Phoenician and Akkadian, constituting the main subgroup of the Afro-Asiatic family. The second definition listed is relating to the people who speak Semitic languages, especially Hebrew and Arabic. So clearly what Kyrie Irving is saying based on that definition is that he believes that he is Semitic, that he hails from maybe Africa or from Asia, which is what the documentary explores. And I'm going to give you my feedback because obviously I watched the documentary after listening to this, right? His feedback is, do not make the word Semitic just about Jewish people in America. It includes a lot of other people, okay? Now you might disagree with that. You might disagree with the Oxford Dictionary definition, but you can't be mad at him for stating the actual Oxford Dictionary definition. Because there was so much pressure that was put upon me to condemn Kyrie Irving, right? To condemn Kyrie Irving based on this press conference, to basically decide that his pain is irrelevant. When I watched this press conference, I felt Kyrie's pain. I felt his pain, and I will say this emotionally and not rationally, as a Black person. People don't often think about how bizarre it is that we don't know where we come from, right? We don't know. If you ask the majority of white people, they'll say, oh, my family's from Scotland. My husband's family can go back so many generations and talk about where they're from in England. And when you talk to most people, they have this sort of cultural understanding of their history. We don't. It's a weird feeling. You do sort of feel out of place. And yes, of course, it's because of the slave trade. And I'm not throwing that on anybody. I'm not saying that it's somebody else's fault. But what Kyrie Irving says is that you can't pit atrocity against another atrocity and basically say that his pain doesn't matter, that his noble pursuit of wanting to know where he came from, even if he landed on the wrong conclusions, is something that he is valid in feeling. It's a journey that he is valid in wanting to go on and wanting to partake in. So no, I'm not going to turn my back on Kyrie Irving and pretend that he's an awful human being based on this press conference. It's wrong. There are a lot of people that feel that they are in pain from the Jewish community because they're upset that he shared this link. But also, if you're not paying attention, there are a lot of Black Americans that are telling you that they feel that they're in pain because you're telling them that they're not allowed to feel the way they feel about not understanding their roots. Following the statement that was made by the Brooklyn Nets, they then came back and they have listed the 6 steps that Kyrie Irving must complete to return back to the Brooklyn Nets. And here's what they are. Ready? The first thing that Kyrie Irving must do is apologize for linking the movie. Let's stop right there. That is an absurdity, okay? There's an absurdity. Kyrie Irving, on the other hand, which, by the way, is my true opinion, really got the NBA association angry when he refused to get the COVID vaccine. So despite the fact that Kyrie Irving quietly supported the BLM movement, he gave millions of dollars to the George Floyd family, despite the fact that he is by no estimation a conservative or on the right, they're angry at him because they feel that they have some ownership over his body. And when he took a quiet protest and stance and decided that he was not going to get the COVID vaccine, which now has been proven a completely valid stance, I was one of the early ones too. You're not just going to put something in my body because you're telling everybody that they should do it immediately to save the world. It didn't make sense. And the NBA is angry because Kyrie Irving held that stance. And what better way than to try to hang him for sharing a link to a movie that the overwhelming majority of people that are weighing in did not watch. The movie is 3.5 hours long. But nope, the first thing he must do is apologize for linking the movie absent any comment. The second thing that they want him to do is to complete the anti-hate causes that the Nets first mentioned on November 2nd. It included a $500,000 donation to the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL. But last week, the ADL CEO, Jonathan Greenblatt, said the organization could not accept the money while Irving refused to apologize. So by the way, he should never give a single red cent to the ADL. They are a hate group. They call me, every single person, a hateful human being. They're essentially just like BLM, right? They say you can buy your way back into society. It's like indulgences if you just give us a lot of money. What? That's completely foolish. No, you should not just take $500,000 from somebody in order to get his job back. I mean, how ridiculous is that? It's extortion at its finest. The third thing that they want Kyrie Irving to do is to complete sensitivity training. Okay, whatever that means. The fourth thing is that he must complete anti-Semitic and hate training, both of which will be created by the Nets. The fifth thing he must do is to meet with Jewish community leaders in Brooklyn. The sixth thing that he must do is meet with Nets owner Joe Tsai to demonstrate the lessons learned and that the gravity of the harm caused is understood. So this is now becoming basically a humiliation ritual, right? So I can't imagine just having shared a link to a movie, even, yes, okay, the movie had some falsehoods. He's acknowledged that. He immediately acknowledged it, which was the right thing to do, that there are some things in here that maybe are not correct. He took ownership over that. But despite doing that, they're just humiliating him. They just want to humiliate him. They want to take money from him, and they want to show to everybody else that we have the full power and control over our players. And this gets into what Kyrie Irving said about feeling like he's still an emotional and a spiritual slave in this country. I've talked about this often, and it so resonates with me. Again, I'm coming from a position of feeling and not a position necessarily of fact, but I have always had this feeling that I'm not really free, right? I'm not really free to be a Black person unless I abide by somebody else's rules. I'm not really free to say what I think unless I abide by somebody else's rules. For a very long time, it was difficult for me to say I do not support Black Lives Matter. I think that they are extortionists. I do not want to have to be a victim because of the color of my skin. I don't want to fund other groups and make them more powerful and secretly know that they're not actually helping Black Americans get ahead. And I felt relegated almost to that position based on the color of my skin. That's what it means to be an emotional slave, right? Is to be told perpetually that you have to be a victim. And now, in many ways, they're proving his point, that he is trying to express to you guys that he has held on to this hurt from the time he was a little boy of not knowing where he came from. And he felt that this documentary, which, by the way, I watched, and it looks like a PowerPoint. It is so low budget and it's so poorly done and it's very confusing. But despite me feeling all those ways about the documentary, I do understand why the documentary makers, as Black people, wanted to go on this journey to simply try to understand where they came from. Their conclusions potentially wrong. So let's relegate those conclusions to a debate. Let's have a conversation. Let's not further a divide between Black Americans and Jewish Americans who are fighting to say, no, I'm the biggest victim. No, I'm the biggest victim. No, maybe you have to give $500,000 to BLM to understand how we feel. No, you have to give $500 to the ADL to understand how we feel. Why don't we actually sit down and understand that there are a lot of people who are valid in the way that they feel? Let's hear those individuals and not censor them, because censorship does not work. It does not make the problem go away. Do you want to know what the actual result is, by the way, of the censorship that came? The ADL is now calling for the documentary to be pulled down. This documentary, which was obscure, in which nobody would have watched, even though Kyrie Irving tweeted it, is now the #1 thing watched on Amazon. It's #1 documentary on Amazon because everybody's wondering, Streisand effect, what the heck is all of the fuss about? And beyond that, now people are watching it assuming that everything in the documentary is true. These are real comments that are happening online. Pay attention to the trends of Kyrie, right? The hashtag Kyrie on Twitter. If you go under the comments, if you go onto Facebook and you look at the discussions that are happening all across America, they believe that everything in this documentary is true because of how vicious the media was in their overreaction and how vicious they are being in their punishment towards Kyrie Irving. So what I really want to say to you guys is understand that that's how it works. If you're not going to be bold enough to have tough discussions, you're instead going to essentially hang Kyrie Irving, right, for perhaps sharing something that he shouldn't have shared without some commentary that, hey, everything in this is not true. What you're going to end up with is more people that feel that everything in the documentary is true, which is not really what you want to do.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14, verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was Abraham, born in the city of a black man called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel, according to Genesis chapter 10.